Joining us now is political analyst Professor Joe Siracusa. Joe Siracusa, thank you so much for your time. Donald Trump certainly delivered a powerful, brilliant, entertaining and patriotic State of the Union address. According to a poll by CNN, the majority of people watching say that Trump's policies will move the country in the right direction. That's 64%, according to this CNN poll. But left-wing media hosts are in meltdown over Trump's address. Here's MS Now host Rachel Maddow calling Trump's address violence porn.
He was speaking quickly, even if he was ad-libbing a lot. But then he ended up slowing down a lot, and particularly slowing down markedly for long stretches of the speech that were essentially sort of violence porn. He talked about people being covered in blood, gushing blood, blood pouring out of things. He talked about people being on the edge of death. He went into graphic detail on a number of different people's injuries of various kind. And in those moments, he slowed down, ad-libbed a lot, and tried to give seemingly as much sort of gory detail as he could, talking about very bloody scenes.
She is such a miserable woman. I think Donald Trump describing things such as Maduro's capture, it's part of storytelling, parts of bringing emotion to the events that have taken place. But Rachel Maddow's analysis of Trump's speech is that it was all just too violent. I think she's a bit unhinged with that analysis. Joe Siracusa, I want to get your thoughts on Trump's address, but also your reaction to what Rachel Maddow had to say.
Well, Rachel Maddow, of course, is Trump's sworn enemy, and she's suffering what Ellen Dershowitz coined Trump derangement syndrome. Her comments are not very useful. I mean, you don't have to like Trump or love Trump, but I'll tell you what, he's the most entertaining president in my lifetime. I mean, yesterday was my 50th State of the Union address.
Wow.
I've been through 14 presidents, and I got to tell you that the State of the Union address, up to people like Trump, it's pretty boring. You know, most people don't watch it; they go to sleep. It doesn't say anything, and you know. But he's not the ringmaster of the mega circus for nothing. You know, he brought a lot of glamour to it. He brought a lot of little people in there, and he handed out awards. Everyone likes awards night, and he brought in this very popular ice hockey team. I was actually moved by the victims that he highlighted. That is, their daughters or the parents of the daughters. I mean, these are very hard things. I mean, sure, it looked like you know, a sort of a reality show, but that's what American politics is now. What the president should have been doing, what I think, is that he had to think about the midterm elections before he gave the speech. And he had to worry about three groups that have slipped away from him. That is the youth vote, the non-whites, and the independents. Those are the people who elect people. Gabriella, there are 255 million Americans eligible to vote. Only 150 million voted the last time, so it's very important that parties are divided. So, but you need those independent voters to come back. So those are the people he should be pitching for. And of course, this is his last major address before the midterms. The midterms are very important, as your audience may or may not know. As soon as the House of Representatives gets 218 members from one party, they can impeach anybody in the place. And if the Democrats get back in, and they're tipped to win, I mean, that tends to happen when they're not in the White House, they're going to impeach President Trump again for the third time. They're going to impeach his trade secretary, Lutnick, for his Epstein relationships. They're going to go after the Homeland Security lady, and they're going to go after everybody, as a matter of fact. It's going to be quite unuseful. Now, I think it was an important speech in this sense. I think the president told everybody what he was thinking. I mean, I know there were important polls before the talk that said that 70% of Americans think he's concentrating on the wrong things, going in the wrong direction. Only 6 in 10 Americans don't think much about him in terms of his popularity. But then again, you know, they felt that way about the last guy and the guy before that. So I think, but most Americans are worried about what Australians are worried about: the inflation, the economy, and the cost of living. I mean, these are things that normal, everyday people have to think about. And Trump made a pitch for them. He told them that things are brighter than they look. That may or may not be true, but during the just before the Great Depression, the president said, good times are about ready to roll again. Well, that didn't happen, and so the president has to be hopeful. I think it was kind of a hopeful message. But look, with Trump, I mean, it is just show business. It's wonderful viewing. It was an hour and 47 minutes, and you didn't know what was going to come next. And this guy is able to kill people with his entertainment value. That is, he can combine politics with television. He is the master of television. I think his audience was very disrespectful. I mean, on the one night of the year, they could at least applaud for the ice hockey team or anybody else who gets the. This one guy got a Congressional Medal of Honor at the age of 100 years old. I mean, better late than never, I suppose. But you have to stand up for that one too. But they were quite a surly mob, and these speeches tend to exhibit the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good thing is, the president told you what was on his mind. The bad thing is that the audience wasn't too responsive, and the ugly thing is that some members of the audience were on the verge of treason. That is, they were, when you start shouting abuse at the head of the free world, I mean, you're really out of place, as a matter of fact. And I like the snub, Gabriella, he gave to the Supreme Court. The body language said it all. He didn't even shake a couple of their hands. He walked right by them. But look, this is the president for the ages. I don't know who would replace him when he goes on, and he's going to fight like hell to try to win that midterm. But the trouble is, he's not on the ballot. So what he was giving everybody yesterday was the playbook. He said, you take this to your voters, and you tell them this is what Donald Trump says. Well, they may believe it or they may not, but the important thing, I think, in the midterms is for Americans to roll out of bed and vote. I mean, it's not like in Australia where you might get the day off, or it's a weekend kind of thing. You got to make an effort. And the college kids have to roll out of their dorms and go vote for somebody too if they want to. So, and some Americans, they might say, the hell with it. My interest rates have gone up no matter what I do. Having trouble with the first home. Life is a mess. I can't get promoted. Business is stalled, et cetera, et cetera. And so, what's the point? So a number of Americans, over 110 million, as a matter of fact, have decided just to stand on the sidelines and let things play out.
I just want to pick up on something you said a little earlier about being moved in Donald Trump's speech. And I agree. I was deeply moved listening to Donald Trump honouring Charlie Kirk. We, of course, saw Erica Kirk, his widow there. Donald Trump was calling out political violence. He also honoured Irina Zavrutska, the young woman who was murdered on a train in Charlotte. Let's just take a look.
So last year, Charlie was violently murdered by an assassin and martyred for his beliefs. His wonderful wife, Erica, is with us tonight. Erica, please stand. On that train, no one will ever forget the expression of terror on Irina's face as she looked up at her attacker in the last seconds of her life. She died instantly. She had escaped a brutal war only to be slain by a hardened criminal, set free to kill in America, came in through open borders. Mrs. Zaretska, tonight I promise you we will ensure justice for your magnificent daughter, Irina.
That was just such a powerful moment. It's really hard not to be moved by something like that. It gives me goosebumps. Yet some Democrats refuse to stand for Irina Zavrutska's grieving parents there, which says so much. Also, Donald Trump gave a special mention to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Let's just watch this.
And I also want to thank the man they report to, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Thank you, Marco. People like you. Marco got 100% of the votes when he was in confirmation. I think our next one was about 54%. And some of the Democrats are now saying, I can't believe we approved that guy. And he said it's an honor that they feel that way, right, Marco? You have done a great job, great Secretary of State. I think he'll go down as the best ever.
I mean, the entertainment value that Donald Trump brings, it's extraordinary. People like you, Marco Rubio. But look, Marco Rubio is certainly emerging as the real star of the administration. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, he looks presidential. Let me say something about those other guests, and I'm not talking about Charlie Kirk's wife, who could fill a stadium by herself. It's the mother of the woman who was murdered. He also had another mother whose child was murdered by an illegal alien. Donald Trump has an ability to do something that I haven't seen in my lifetime, and that is he makes people feel like they're being seen.
Yeah.
Little people. And, the idea that Americans can actually see these people and identify with their problems, and they all can, who hasn't been on an elevator or elevated train or subway or bus late at night wondering if they're going to make it to the hotel. But, he makes people believe they're being seen. And that's a great skill. Joe Biden couldn't do that. He just... And George W. Bush couldn't do that, and other people, et cetera. But look, I think he does a great job of that. He's a great communicator in that sense. And, he might be a little bit over the top, but, American politics is a little bit over the top. And in terms of his patriotism, I mean, it's undiminished. And he likes the military, and he likes tariffs for the same reasons, Gabriella, and that is they don't talk back. They do what he wants them to do. He wants them to raise money, and he wants military solutions to diplomatic problems that are slipping away. Now, the big problem here, of course, is Iran. Do you pick a fight with a nation twice the size of Texas, the size of Europe, as a matter of fact? This isn't Maduro in Venezuela, or this isn't Cuba or Mexico. This is 92 million people. Many of whom would fight if you had foreign troops in the soil. And he's got a large, what he calls armada, and that's what it is, offshore in two different directions, which I understand over the weekend has cost $2.3 billion to keep in place for the last 30 days. That's a lot of money.
Wow.
To scare the hell out of your enemy. Now, if I were the Iranians, I would have a real hard think about what to do next. Now, one of the famous fellows who was kidnapped in 1979, who was working with the State Department, said over the weekend that he thought that the Ayatollah and the leadership there would rather go down fighting than lose ignominiously. What he meant was, sometimes people just roll the dice. Well, Donald Trump's prepared to do that. The trouble is that the American forces could do this, could pummel Iran for about, say 2 weeks before they run out of Tomahawk cruise missiles. They have 800 nearby. And you can't beat a nation with Tomahawk cruise missiles. If you're actually going to go to war with somebody, you have to put in foot soldiers. You can't defeat anybody unless you put soldiers on the ground. And America's not prepared to do that. But, Israel will be terribly affected if this happens, as well as America's friends and allies in the Middle East, if the Iranians can cause enough trouble. So the president has to think very carefully about what to do next. The trouble is he's on a roll. He was successful in Venezuela. He's done what he wanted to do in Mexico. He's got them to pay attention, and he beat the Iranians up pretty badly last year. But he was lucky they did not respond in kind. They took their beating and sort of shut up and went away. But this time he wants them to cough up all the uranium-enriched material. He says he never wants them to get a nuclear weapon. Well, forever and never in diplomacy, Gabriella, is really a stretch. I mean, these treaties only last for about a lifetime.
Let's listen to what he had to say about Iran. He certainly laid out his case for a possible attack on Iran during his State of the Union speech to Congress, saying that he would not allow the world's biggest sponsor of terrorism to have nuclear weapons.
My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen.
Also in news today, the Australian government is urging the families of diplomats to leave Israel and Lebanon amid rising fears of military conflict between the US and Iran. So that certainly gives potentially an indication that a strike could be soon. But I want to get your thoughts on this decision and how it's being kind of thought out within the Trump administration, because this prospect of an attack on Iran is generating concern and division at the top levels of the Trump administration, reportedly, about the best way forward, because sensitive discussions about the risks of military action is being leaked to the American media. There are reports that Vice President J.D. Vance has concerns about a military operation and it potentially going wrong. Is that causing Donald Trump a headache?
Not really. I mean, Trump's trying to put a positive spin on this. Gabriella, I'll tell you that the worst kept secret in Washington, and that is America has been at war with Iran since 1979, since the Ayatollah's followers kidnapped those American citizens at the embassy in Tehran. Then we had, I think, a failed rescue attempt. We should have gone to war with them, crushed them. But we've allowed them to go on for 47 years. They are, he's right, the president's right. They are the world's #1 exporter of terrorism. They have funded Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis. They have killed Americans, but I'm sure Australians indirectly, as a matter of fact. These are people. These are the bad guys. Now, the Iranian people, the Persians who've been there for thousands of years, they're putting up with the mullahs because they seem to be the only people who can direct traffic and deliver the mail. So sometimes nations get stuck with governments they just do not want. And of course, we have, if the president's right, that the Iranians, the Iranian government, he said they have killed 38,000 protesters. I think he mentioned that phrase, he had that phrase in his speech. That's an enormous amount of people who protested. And I thought the president was going to use some of these forces a couple of weeks ago, or at least in January, when we had the first uprisings that we saw on television. Right now, it's going to be a little harder because the mullahs have cleaned up the streets. And of course, you got the Revolutionary Guard who count on the mullahs for their paychecks. So you don't know which way that's going to go. But look, I think if he goes in, he's going to hit them very hard. He's not going to try to decapitate them. What he's going to try to do is break the place up. I mean, if you can't get the leadership, you break the place up, because there's always a new leader to take over in a place like that. But the thing is that the president realizes that if he's able to deliver a victory here, it might help everybody in mid-November. Now, keep in mind, you can win a war and lose the election. Don't ask me, ask Winston Churchill. He got turfed out before the Second World War was over, but after he'd won the war in Europe. George H.W. Bush got turfed out after he won the first Gulf War. Sometimes nations, they just don't put that much stock in foreign victories because they're worried about those other things we talked about: inflation, cost of living, and affordability. But the president, if he gets in, he's going to get in all the way. Now, this idea that you can get in and not expect to be hit back, I think is sort of a fantasy. That's what the Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War is worried about, is what happens when they hit back. And I'm sure the Israelis are very worried about this. I'm sure the so-called, is it Iron Dome, is that what they call it? It has to be replenished from time to time. They may not have enough to do that. And the Iranians have plenty of ballistic missiles, and then of course they don't have to have ICBMs. They just need short-range ballistic missiles to get where they want to go. So they can do a great deal of damage to America's allies in the area. And of course, there are 30 to 40,000 Americans and their allies in the Middle East anyway. So they might want to hit pipelines in Saudi Arabia. So the price of gasoline and petrol goes up, and they might want to close the Strait of Hormuz. Then you got all hell to pay for it. So Trump has to be very careful here between the reality of what he's dealing with and the headiness of the success he's had. He's had enormous success so far.
He certainly has.
And he's got that military on side. We hear a lot of jumping up and down in the military, but those guys, they are four square behind this president, because this president is four square behind them. And he's got unfinished business.
Joe Siracusa, political analyst, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate all your insights and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.